The following is a Cheeky Leprechaun production.
Pop culture is the entirety of ideas.
Me, Mario.
Let the bass kick.
I am the greatest.
Holy eggshell!
I am your father.
This is the Pop Culture Report with Dan O'Kelly.
Welcome to the Pop Culture Report. Another installment. I am Dan O'Kelly, and welcome back. Welcome back. It's been a pretty big week in the world of pop culture, which is always good when you host a podcast based on pop culture. So, yeah, it's always exciting to be able to sit down and record something new. What have you been doing in your week? Have you maybe seen a movie or started a new TV show? I've started it a couple of days ago now, Easy on Netflix, which is a really interesting show, to say the least. It sort of follows a range of different characters, each episode based on a new character or a different character, but intertwining the characters we've previously met from other episodes, and sort of in the process, I guess, creating this world. It's a small world where they all exist within each other's realm of reality, I guess, unknowingly to them. Obviously, they're TV show characters. But that's been quite good, and there's actually quite a few big name... Well, when I say big name, I say that reluctantly. I don't want to say big name actors, because they're certainly not, but they are, I would say, B-grade. You've got people like Dave Franco. He shows up in that. You've also got Jake Johnston, I think his name is, who you'd probably know from either New Girl, which is a popular TV show, or was a popular TV show, or maybe even the voice of Schlubby Peter Parker from Spider-Verse, the animated movie that was very popular early this year. So yeah, watching Easy it's been good. I've enjoyed that a lot. It's one of those shows, though, where I tried watching it, I want to say about a year ago, and it's kind of, because it's so heavily based in real life, and just, the mundaneness of what everyday life can be, it is an easy one to find yourself picking up your phone and sort of losing track of watching along as the narrative sort of unfolds. But that's the issue. You do that, it's a detriment to yourself, because it is good. It is good. And I did that a year ago, but now I've sat down and I'm watching it with my girlfriend. And watching things with somebody can really keep you off your phone, because you don't want to be that, the annoying person that's sort of distracting. It's like when you're in a cinema and somebody, either next to you or in front, the row in front of you, is on their phone. It's a distraction, not only due to the light that can be, shone from the phone, but also maybe, are they not into this? If they're not into this, maybe this isn't very good. Maybe I don't like this. Suddenly, these sort of thoughts start racing through a person's mind, and all of a sudden, nobody's enjoying the show or the film, and, that's not fair. So if you are watching a show with somebody, or you've started watching a show with somebody, don't be that guy or girl that, sits on the phone, refreshing Facebook or Instagram. Nobody cares for that. And you're not going to make any friends like that. It's as simple as that. Anyway, show sponsor before we roll on into the show, Bell Design Co. Bell Design Co. is a graphic design label who are the ones to thank for our show's logo. Whether you're a small startup or big business, a passion project, or a little old podcaster like me, you need all the help you can get in reaching and expanding your audience for your product. Having professionally designed logos and branding for whatever it is you're doing is key to making your product as eye-catching as possible in the crowded world that is social media. So instead of going to a large agency where your project will probably be pushed from desk to desk, head over to Bell Design Co., where you'll interact directly with Beck and Estelle through the creation of your logo and branding needs. If you get in contact with them, use the promo code POPCULTUREREPORT to let them know Dan sent you for a 10% off discount. Get in contact with them at Facebook, Bell Designs, Instagram, @BellDesignCo, or email all inquiries to estelle.battaglia1@gmail.com. That's Estelle, ESTELLE .battaglia, BATTAGLIA1@gmail.com. Alrighty, let's get into a little bit of pop culture news. Let's see what's been happening around the world. Alrighty, plenty in the news this week, as I sort of just teased off the top there. You may have seen this, you may not have. Tom Holland, who is the actor who plays Spider-Man in the MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe, has come out and said that he would really like to do a live-action Spider-Verse movie. His idea of doing a Spider-Verse movie would include, now let me see, Toby Mcguire, who was the original sort of live-action Spider-Man, cinematically, anyway. There might have been an 80s Spider-Man movie. I don't believe there was. I think it was a telly movie, if anything. So the first big box office Spider-Man, Toby Mcguire, and then Andrew Garfield, who was sort of, Spider-Man in the next franchise or trilogy of films that, well, never really quite became a trilogy because it got the flick after number 2, which I always thought was disappointing. I liked Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker and Spider-Man, but so Tom Holland's come out and said this, and said, look, I'd love to do a Spider-Verse movie. Obviously, speculation went up in the air about who would be Miles Morales. For those unaware of what Spider-Verse is, earlier this year there was an animated film that was released by Marvel and Sony. I actually think it was largely released by Sony. It was a Sony production, it wasn't a Disney production. And they did a film that revolved, it was based in the world of Spider-Man, but the idea that the world, there's multiple Spider-Man, different versions of Spider-Man in different worlds. So, running parallel to our, the Peter Parker we know. All right, so let's say Tom Holland, for instance. That might be, I guess in DC Comics terms, Earth 1. But there's multiple Earths or universes. So a different alternate universe, there is a different version of Peter Parker where in the Spider-Verse we saw this year was schlubby Peter Parker, bit overweight. He'd been dumped by, I believe it was MJ. Actually, I think MJ might have died in that. Ooh, spoilers. That might not be a spoiler. I'm not even sure if that's true. Can't really remember it. Great movie, though. There was also Spider-Gwen. So Gwen Stacy actually is Spider-Woman, I think she's called. So that's the idea. The idea being that in all these different universes, there are different versions of Spider-Man. What would happen if they all came together due to some sort of shift in the dimensions of the universe, or whatever, time travel, or whatever it may be, however it is that each film is set up to have these characters interact, what that would be like. What would it be like to have this world where all of our different Spider-Man trilogies or franchises that we've seen, we're now being told, hang on, they weren't just different movies. They all exist within the same, I'm reluctant to say universe, but you know what I mean. Like, they're all now going to interact, and all these movies have been leading to this, essentially. That would be a weird thing, especially given that, the original Spider-Man movies with Toby Mcguire weren't even, a Disney production, or at that point, really a Marvel production. They were a Sony production, with Marvel sort of involved. Anyway, my point is, anyone that saw Spider-Verse sat there and thought, imagine they did this in a live-action way. Imagine that. How good would that be? Well, Tom Holland has some pull. He's now essentially the big hero, the big actor, the big name in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He's now their Downey. That's their new Robert Downey Jr. So, Stranger things have happened. You never know what we may get. All I'm saying is I have heard, and I haven't seen it yet myself, at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, which was released here in Australia yesterday, so I haven't got to see it yet. Or maybe Monday, depending when this goes up. Apparently the mid-credit scene changes everything. Everything. Apparently, I spoke to somebody who spoke to a friend after they walked out, and they were like, I just don't know what to even think anymore. Like, I just can't believe what I've just watched. That could mean a bunch of shit. It could mean, Spider-Verse? Probably not. But it could also mean things like Fantastic Four. Could mean X-Men. You never know what it is. My point, again, is Marvel continue to surprise us. Continue to just make us go, holy shit. Who would have seen this coming? No one. So, anyway, hold on for that one. In other comic book news, this might be a little deep cuts for people, but anyone involved in comics or a bit of a fan of comics will very much be hugely excited about this next news. This is huge in the world of comic books. So people say, grown adults who like comic books, right? And they've had to defend it for God knows how long. We live in a good time now where you don't have to defend it as much. Now it's kind of cool and mainstream to like comic books thanks to comic book movies. But there was a time where, in the 80s, 90s, early to mid-2000s, where it wasn't cool to like comic books. It was sort of, nerdy. And nerdy wasn't cool at that point. And you hear people like Kevin Smith, the Kevin Smiths of the world, or these sort of big kids who actually have some, a public platform and persona. They come out and they're like, oh man, it was a nightmare trying to not only, be into comic books, but get laid at the same time. Like, that's, I don't say laid, but they say laid. And having to try and explain to a girl why, oh no, it's not kiddie to like comic books. Like, comic books aren't kiddie. Read some of this shit. Like, this shit is for grown-ups. There's a couple of examples that people from that generation always go to in terms of adult content that can really go a long way in helping you justify to another adult, hey, this isn't kid stuff. One of those is Batman Dark Knight Returns. Another is Batman Arkham Asylum, which are both like really gritty, gruesome graphic novels. They're not even comics. You couldn't call them comics. They're a graphic novel for adults. But the biggest one that people always say is Neil Gaiman's Sandman. And Sandman, for those unaware, revolves around the main character known as Morpheus, or Dream. So he goes by multiple names, and he's one of the 7 Endless. And the other Endless are Destiny, Death, Desire, Despair, Delirium, and Destruction. So you can sort of see the tone and the concept there. So you've got, again, Dream, who is the main character, Destiny, Death, Desire, Despair, Delirium, and Destruction. And the series sort of centers around Dream having been captured for 70 years and then finally escaping and returning to his kingdom to find it's been left, in ruins, and he has to rebuild his kingdom. That's sort of the basic premise of the series. Anyway, it's really highly regarded by a lot of people, and Neil Gaiman won countless awards for it. Anyway, people have been calling for this. It's sort of in the same vein as Spawn in terms of its cult following. Todd McFarlane's Spawn, which is now also getting a film adaptation written and directed by Todd McFarlane himself. Sandman has been heavily protected by Neil Gaiman for all this time because he didn't want it to be watered down or, the source material not being, paid justice to, given justice to, whatever that, struggling with my words. Finally, though, there's been a deal made where Sandman is going to be turned into a limited series for Netflix. There you go. Netflix, having parted ways with Marvel and all its Marvel TV shows, seemingly has turned to DC now and just sort of said, look, we've got the cash. You guys have your poor-ass streaming platform. Let's work together and just get some shows up and running. How about that? And Sandman is one of them. And it's said to be DC Comics' highest budget adaptation of any of their characters so far. In TV format, of course. So Netflix is throwing cash at it, which it does, the content itself does demand a pretty high budget, you would imagine, given the concept and the material itself. You know, you're dealing with a fictional reality, I don't, for lack of a better word, a dream. Like, it's going to be very, I don't know, you're going to have to spend a lot of money to create this reality and dream sequences and stuff that is involved in Sandman, I guess. So it's not surprising that Netflix is throwing some serious cash at their Sandman adaptation, but it doesn't just stop there. There's more that comes from this. So not only is Neil Gaiman going to be involved in it, but also David S. Goyer is on as an executive producer. David S. Goyer, the guy behind writing the Dark Knight trilogy, for starters, Inception, I believe, was David S. Goyer. He's done so much stuff. Man of Steel, which, you know, take it or leave it, depending where you see it. I like it. Hugely... Blade, actually, come to think of it. Blade was David S. Goyer. So he's done heaps. And then in addition to that, so while David S. Goyer is not writing, he's executive producing alongside Neil Gaiman, we've actually got Alan Heinberg, who was the writer of Wonder Woman, feature film of Wonder Woman. So Sandman seems to be in pretty good hands. So that's pretty exciting for all you Sandman buffs out there. Moving on, an interesting tidbit has come out for Quentin Tarantino's latest film, which I'm not even sure if... Well, it has to be true, what's being slipped up. But how it's only been slipped up now is beyond me, considering this film has shown in Cannes. I don't understand how, like, people have seen this movie. They must have had to have signed some sort of, you know, embargo, I think they're called, or some crap, I don't know, to say, look, okay, I won't say anything. Because this is huge. It's been reported that Jack Nicholson has come out of retirement and will appear in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Who would have thought? How has that not got out? That is huge news. Jack's back. I've always wanted to say that. Jack's back. But it was slipped up by an actor from the movie, Lou Temple, while talking to the media about his role in the upcoming film. Just let it slip. His exact quote was, you know, I'm a spoke in the wheel in that movie, which is fine, but to watch DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, Al Pacino, Jack Nicholson, Russell... Wait, what? Did he say Jack Nicholson? Yes, he did. As he just went on to say Russell Crowe, Margot Robbie, Luke Perry before he passed. God rest his soul. And then to have Quentin Tarantino overseeing it all. This guy is a madman. He becomes his movie. Hang on, wait. We don't give a shit about the rest of the shit you said, even though the Luke Perry thing was nice. Before that, Jack Nicholson? What? No one has said this. So that's huge. Jack Nicholson is acting in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Apparently. So get to the cinemas once that's out, because we're going to, see Jack. Back. Yeah, okay, that's enough. Found that very interesting. Very, very interesting. What else have we got in the news? Actually, that was interesting. Why the Last Man series. Still in the works at FX, for those who are, holding on to dear life, hoping that pulls through. It's got a new showrunner, Eliza Clark, who's also helmed as showrunner Animal Kingdom and The Killing. So, why the Last Man series, which is also a comic book adaptation, as most freaking things are these days. This is another really highly regarded one. It's sort of been in flux for a while now, and people have been like, oh, will it happen? Won't it happen? It looks like it's happening, apparently. And it just keeps having new showrunners because they can't quite agree with FX what the tone of the show should be, which is a little bit concerning. I think most people who are fans of Y the Last Man are just hoping that it's FX that are like, no, we want to stay true to the source material, being the comic, rather than it being the other way around and these all these different showrunners and directors and stuff coming in and them saying, we've got to just do the source material. Surely it's a straight adaptation. And FX saying no. So that's, positive and concerning for all you fans out there of Y the Last Man. Well, that about wraps up most of the headlines that I've captured. Any of importance anyway. Again, I haven't seen Spider-Man too much, so don't expect a review. Too much. I haven't seen it at all. Why would I say not too much? Don't expect a review in this. I am hoping to see it in the coming days, but for now, let's jump into a little wrestling chat. Eh? That's been going well. There's plenty of news there. Let's do that. All right, you wrestling fans, this is what you've been waiting for. Huge freaking news in the world of wrestling. Paul Heyman, who is the madman genius behind the cult classic that was ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling, from back in the 90s, mildly revived by WWE and Paul Heyman in the mid-2000s. Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff. Now, wrestling fans are going to know Eric Bischoff. The mastermind behind WCW and WCW's attempt, and almost successful attempt, to run WWF out of business in the 90s when it took over the ratings and was smashing the WWF in the TV ratings for 83 consecutive weeks. That Eric Bischoff, the one that almost caused Vince McMahon to be nothing anymore, they're returning to prominent positions in a wrestling company. They have both been hired as the head creative directors, I believe they are being touted as. What company? When we're in the midst of this war that I've been talking about for the last couple of episodes, the brewing war between AEW, this new upstart young buck company, going against the juggernaut that is WWE, who has just acquired the mastermind talent that is Paul Heyman, Eric Bischoff, the two that almost just caused WWE to crumble back in the day and made them reshape all of their programming to be more hip and cool. Who of these masterminds signed with WWE? Yeah, and that's not a bad thing. So WWE has it's been so much pressure on the WWE in recent times about the product being shit, about it being stale, about it being, sort of just format filling. You've got your basic outline of the show all blank, but your segments, and just spot filling with different shit each week. It's crap. 90% of what's on that TV, whether it be Raw, actually I'll give SmackDown a little bit more credit. Probably about 75% of SmackDown is crap, 90% of Raw's crap, and then the rest in between is okay and all good. Finally, with the arrival of AEW and the now undeniable amount of pressure that's being pushed on WWE being a publicly traded company to maybe step up their creative a little bit, well, it's reached a boiling point, and they've pulled the trigger, and they've hired Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff. Now, let's start with Paul Heyman, okay? Paul Heyman, not only was he in charge of ECW and the creative mind behind ECW back in the 90s, Paul Heyman is highly regarded by fans for his time spent as the head writer of SmackDown from 2002 to 04, I believe it was. Paul Heyman would take the lesser-known actors, or wrestlers, I guess you would say, from the WWE roster. So what happened was, in 2002, there was a brand split. So there was just there was 2 shows, Raw and SmackDown, but the same wrestlers would be on both. Rock, Austin, whoever. And at a point, WWE said, you know what, let's split the shows. So each show has its own distinct roster with its own people, and there's no jumping between. And there was a lot of nerves because people were like, well, you know, Stone Cold, Steve Austin, The Rock, they're your big stars. What happened was one show got each of those, and then the rest was sort of like split up and largely agreed upon backstage by the head writers of each show. So Paul Heyman went to the head writer of Raw and said, look, I'll do you a favor. I'll give you the Dudleys, but you give me Edge, you know, Christian and Kurt Angle. All of which who were like mid-card performers, and the Dudleys were like one of the best tag teams of all time, and the writer was like, absolutely, what a stupid deal you've just done. Other people like this, Chris Benoit, you know, Eddie Guerrero, these sort of people, Paul Heyman wanted because he knew he could do something with them. And not only could he do something with them, he turned them into some of the biggest stars in WWE history. Before Paul Heyman took them to SmackDown, they were not. And due to that, you know, this is an era where Brock Lesnar was, you know, young and up and coming. SmackDown was the must-see show. Raw was not. And this is when Paul Heyman was in charge of what we were seeing on TV, the creative of it. He was the head writer, and it was unmissable TV. So Paul Heyman's back in pretty much the same position, if not with more creative control over Raw. They've put him in charge of Raw, which isn't a bad choice because Raw's the one that needs the most help. Raw is a 3-hour show compared to SmackDown's 2-hour. Raw drags each week. Raw has the bigger talent roster due to having more air to fill, but all of which have very little to do. Whereas when Paul Heyman had his time on SmackDown, he had something for everyone to do. He was utilizing the talent that he had. So the severity of that appointment is huge in the landscape of wrestling, and especially the WWE flagship show that is Monday Night Raw. That is huge for wrestling. So that's exciting, seeing Paul Heyman there. He has been with that company virtually since it purchased ECW. There was a short 5-year, 6-year stint where he left in like mid to late 2000s. But he's been back for roughly 10 years, and he's responsible for some of the better shit we've actually seen on TV in recent times. Things like the Ronda Rousey storylines, Brock Lesnar's storylines. I think there was some AJ Styles storylines in there. He has been responsible for the shit you've liked on TV in recent times. So to hear that after hearing the appointment of him as creative director, fantastic. I'm on board. I'm on board. Eric Bischoff has been appointed creative director of SmackDown, a 2-hour show, which, here's the thing, people will be like, well, Eric Bischoff, he's been out of the business for years. Like, his last stint with a wrestling company was in TNA from 2011 to 2014, I believe it was. And look, was it good? No. Did he have shit talent to work with? Yeah. Like, when TNA are just hiring people, TNA is, for those that are unaware, is another wrestling company, far not nearly on the same level as WWE, or for that matter, an AEW at this point. But, you know, at that point in time, TNA, or Impact Wrestling it's now called, were focused on hiring, you know, Hulk Hogan. And this is 2011. Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Rob Van Dam. Yeah, like, Sting. Most of these people were 45 to 60. 65 probably. Ric Flair was old as shit. So, like, you know, the storylines were good. The storylines were fine. But it was the talent there. And also, just, I mean, that sort of shit isn't going to happen in a WWE that is far more up with the times, despite what you think about Vince McMahon. Also, SmackDown is moving to a network TV channel rather than being on USA Network, which is like sort of a sister channel or whatever they call them, to NBC. It's now going to be on Fox. So, and that's huge. It's literally the biggest TV deal that WWE has ever had is with Fox now. And it's $1 billion deal. And there's intense pressure on WWE to not only deliver the best product they can, but to definitely improve it from where it's currently at. Fox have spent $1 billion to get this property, and they're looking at all the backlash online, the news articles saying, WWE essentially gone to shit, for lack of a better saying or phrase or whatever. And they're like, look, you need to actually, we're going to be hands-on with this. First things first, Fox have said to WWE, we're going to be hands-on with this production. We're going to be hands-on with the product because we've spent so much money on it. Whereas, USA, Universal, might let you go and do whatever you want. We're not going to be that, bystander. We've got a vested interest in this product. We want it to be the best it can be. So what do you do at that point? You bring in a creative director because that's who they're going to want to talk to. They're going to want to talk about the creative. You bring in, not Paul Heyman, who, let's be honest, has huge communication issues when it comes to suits and just general getting on with people. So many people hate the guy for personal reasons. You bring in Eric Bischoff, who is a TV producer outside of wrestling, has been for 25 odd years now, but also within that time, he was the man, the creative liaison with TNT back in the day when WCW was on TNT, Turner Cable or whatever it was back then. He's the guy that not only has the creative direction and the creative mindset, but he came from an executive background. So he knows how to interact with TV executives. He's going to know, what to tell them so to keep them happy. That, for that reason, is a pretty smart move. Regardless of, how in touch with the current product and all that sort of thing that Eric Bischoff may be, in terms of functioning as a creative liaison to a TV network, it's a pretty good fit. Will he have, the ideas, the hip and cool ideas of a Paul Heyman? Maybe not. Maybe, though. This is still the guy that created the NWO. Literally the biggest, most famous faction in professional wrestling. This is him. This is still the guy that almost put WWE under after they led the ratings for 83 consecutive weeks. He's definitely an industry genius. It's just a matter of he's still got it, if he can still keep up with the product. Anyone that's listened to the podcast, 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff, will know the bloke's smart. The bloke knows how to create in the world of wrestling, what works. Mind you, he did run WCW into the ground. But hey, let's be honest, WWE still has Vince McMahon and Triple H in prominent positions. So that's that. People are probably thinking, why would Vince McMahon's still going to call the shots? Absolutely. They're going to have to, it's going to be Vince McMahon sitting atop of the WWE empire. And then below that, Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman liaising with Vince. That's better than what the current issue is, according to Triple H or Paul Levesque, whatever you want to call him, who says that the issue in WWE is Vince has too many people in his ear. Now, by having these two in position, people can't just go directly to Vince because they would be overstepping and going over the heads of Bischoff and Heyman. So, a structural change, which Triple H will be happy with, you would think. But also it's going to be good for the product because for fans, hopefully this means those two guys are going to come in wanting to impress, wanting to improve ratings, in the process, trying to do some pretty innovative and cool shit. And hopefully we just get some good wrestling product from WWE for a change, because it's been a while. And speaking of good wrestling product, AEW had their second main event, what do you call it? Pay-per-view over the weekend. Fighter Fest, it was called. And it was actually free on Bleacher Report, on their Facebook, I believe it was. Now, AEW had a massively successful first pay-per-view. We all know, I've spoken about it on here. Anyone that follows it understands the severity of it. And this was sort of the same. It didn't have the same fanfare leading up to the first one like that did, but this was, while Jon Moxley, or formerly Dean Ambrose from the WWE, debuted on the last pay-per-view, this was his first match within the company. That was big. There was other big moments, but one sort of caught most people's eye, and it's sort of being debated if it's for good or for bad reasons. So what's happened is Cody Rhodes, who's one of the executive vice presidents of the company, son of Dusty Rhodes, you know the story. Look, we know what AEW is trying to do. They want to be the cool and hip alternative to the WWE, which is run by an old man. They want to be doing things that are edgy when WWE is PG. They want to be the adult alternative. They want to attract 18 to 45 as a demographic. Rather than kids and then parents of kids, which is largely what WWE focus on for a profit reason, I guess you would say. Let's be honest. So AEW's out there trying to be, look how different we are. Look, we do the shit that WWE won't do anymore. And that's awesome. Everyone's on board for that. Everyone goes, yes, love a violent match. I love, seeing the chairs in use. Love seeing the barbed wire. All that sort of stuff we don't get to see anymore. That's cool. But there are still limits where just being somewhat educated humans in 2019, even fans will be like, actually, we don't need to see that. Don't need to see that. This comes after, in Cody Rhodes' match, again, as I said, an executive vice president of this company is doing this. So it's setting the standard. Cody Rhodes took an unprotected chair shot to the head from Sean Spears, I think he's going by now. He was Perfect 10, Ty Dillinger in WWE. Look, he took an unprotected chair shot to the head. This is something that WWE hasn't allowed in years, and a lot of companies haven't. Due to concussion. So there was so many, like NFL players, the impact of tackles and stuff builds up over time. And it was the same with WWE or WWF back in the day, where they were taking shots to the head with chairs and whatnot. And they came a time where they said, no, we're not going to do that anymore, because it literally adds nothing to what we're trying to do. And all it does is just, it not only shortens careers, but it's a detriment on their health, the performer's health. And it's a safety measure as well. But AEW and Cody Rhodes, I don't know, someone said, sure, Cody, take the unprotected chair shot to the head. Now, because of the backlash to it, and the backlash was more of, hey, we don't need that. Like, yeah, we're wrapped, you guys are doing this, and it's good for fans, but at the same time, certain things, have changed in the world, not just the wrestling world. We're all very aware of the severity of concussions these days. We don't want to see that. That being an unprotected chair shot. When I say unprotected chair shot, in wrestling, often if it's a shot to the head, which again, they don't even do that in WWE. There won't be a shot to the head. It will be a shot to the stomach. They'll hold the top of the chair and sort of like push it into the stomach of the other wrestler, and then the wrestler will sort of bow down holding their gut, and from there, the wrestler with the chair will grab the chair and like hold it up over their head and then slap it straight across the back, the other wrestler's back, if you can picture that. That's how they will use a chair, because in that way, there's no damage to the head. If you were to take a chair shot to the head, even back in WWF's day of taking chair shots to the head, they would do this, which is a protected chair shot to the head, not an unprotected. A protected chair shot to the head involves the wrestler sort of like getting a hand up in front of the chair just to sort of lessen the impact by a very minor amount. Still would take an absolute battering to your head. But they would still get a hand or two hands in between and sort of like buffer the exposure between the head and the chair. That's a protected chair shot to the head, or one of the ways you can take one. Cody Rhodes turned around and just hands by his side let another wrestler smash him straight over the head with a chair. And a lot of people who aren't, wrestling fans would look at it and go, yeah, it's probably a gimmick chair. It's probably designed to not hurt the wrestler. It's not actually true. Like, it's actually it's a plastic chair. It's not a steel chair. No, there are steel elements to it, like the legs, but it's still a heavy plastic chair. It would hold a person. You can sit on it. They sit on them at ringside, and they go over, they close them, and then they take them in the ring. So that's what AEW is sort of now dealing with, is this interesting little towing of the line. Okay, that's too much for them. So they don't want that back from the days that they remember as being, avid wrestling fans where they loved, certain things that were done on TV. They don't want that part. I wonder what they do want then. Do they want this? Okay, they like that. What about this one? Oh, no, that's too much too? Okay, we won't do that. So, yeah, that was interesting from over the weekend. Between that and definitely the Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff news, that's huge. That's huge. AEW and WWE, that war is continuing, folks, and get excited. I'm going to keep you up to date with it all. Very much so. All right, we're going to do a little trailer review just to sort of wrap things up here. Jumanji 2, I believe it's called Jumanji The Next Level. Trailer's been released for it overnight, and I went into Jumanji, the most recent one with The Rock and stuff, the reboot, I guess you would call it, to the original with Robin Williams. And I was like, why are they doing this? This is stupid. They've modernized it. It's not even the old board game anymore. This is a bit dumb. It's also really comedic, really, really comedic. Whereas the Robin Williams one was funny, but at the same time, it was quite a serious and heavy movie. So I went into it and I was like, I don't think I'll like this. This will be a bit dumb. Loved it. Thought it was hilarious, which, again, weird that it was a detractor for me at first. Ended up loving it and just finding it a lot of fun. Great adventure movie. The Rock was great. I actually really enjoyed the way they modernized it in the end, sort of turning Jumanji into a computer game, which is far more relevant with kids these days, given, there's going to be kids going and seeing Jumanji, and it's for a new generation, not just my generation and older, who were used to the Robin Williams board game version. A lot of kids would be like, board game? What? So I ended up really liking the new Jumanji, I should say. And then I was like, yeah, okay, I'm in for a sequel. That's cool. Is the game just going to get passed on and on? What happens? Absolutely. And I hadn't actually considered what this would mean, how they would do this. The fact that, for those that haven't seen the first one, the characters in the game, within the game, so The Rock, Jack Black, what's his name? Kevin Hart, and I can't remember the girl's name. They embody not only the player playing, but their personality too. So they end up playing. It's actually quite an impressive acting display from those characters, those actors, I should say. And it's going to be the same in this one. I hadn't really put much thought into that not only are they doing a sequel, hey, maybe it won't be the same kids playing the computer game as it was in the first one. Therefore, maybe we're going to see The Rock and Kevin Hart and co. have to display different characters and personalities compared to what they did in the first one, and that's exactly what we're getting. So in this new movie, the game stumbles its way into the house where there's two kids. I'm not too sure on who the two kid actors are, or young adult actors, but also two old men in the house, which is Danny Glover and Danny DeVito. So just quickly get that in your mind. Danny DeVito, yep. And Danny Glover is from Lethal Weapon, if you've seen Lethal Weapon. Just picture that. All right. Now, picture they get sucked into the game, their personalities anyway, and imagine The Rock is Danny DeVito. So The Rock is actually playing Danny DeVito. All the characteristics that you know and love of Danny DeVito, that's happening. Go watch this trailer, because The Rock is, doing all the quirky little facial characteristics, the sort of the same, I guess, like lingo or like delivery of language. I don't know. As Danny DeVito, but you're watching him, you're like, wow, if somebody just showed me a clip of The Rock talking like that, I'd be like, why is he talking like Danny DeVito? So weird. What I actually thought was the funniest was Kevin Hart as Danny Glover. Like this old, beat up, old man, like sort of deep, dark voice. Little Kevin Hart, playing this brooding, older man, like sort of really grumpy old man voice. As sort of, you know what? You'll know this from Lethal Weapon. I'm too old for this shit. That sort of same characteristic of a character. Really funny. Looks like a real nice continuation. We see the returning supporting characters from within the game returning for the movie. And like, it's sort of just at a point now where you already feel, oh, yay. Like, this is a fun place I get to return to. Sort of like when you turn on Crash Bandicoot, which they re-released for PlayStation last year. And, every kid that had a PlayStation 1 back in the day, you'd turn the PlayStation on, and it'd load, and then you'd have Crash, and he'd like jump into a new world, and you'd be like, I love this level with the boulder and I love the trees and stuff. Like, it's like you get sucked in to the world within this movie that these kids it's so hard to explain. It really is. It's already just got that vibe of this is a fun place I like to be, which is the world of Jumanji. And seeing your friends again, these characters like, played by The Rock and Kevin Hart and stuff, you're like, oh yes, I'm looking forward to going back there. And for it to be, the second movie and it be that feeling, that's pretty cool. That's pretty impressive given the really high standard they had set for them by the original film with Robin Williams. That's pretty remarkable they've been able to set their own pace with this. So, Jumanji, the action looks almost better, I would say. The couple of action sequences, there's a scene where they're running across a bridge, a bit of an Indiana Jones type moment, really, where, the bridge starts collapsing, and I believe there was like monkeys or something that were chasing after them across the bridge, and they're jumping at them and stuff. Just looks so intense, and it's like over a cliff face, and the CGI looks really, really solid. And look, I'm in the bag for it. I'm looking forward to it. Jack Black it's just good seeing Jack Black doing comedy and like sort of being a somewhat prominent movie again, like a box office hit that isn't voice acting. It's actually seeing him on screen. There was Goosebumps a couple of years ago, but like, who saw that? Not me. Yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you thought of the original, the reboot of Jumanji. And let me know what you think of this, the trailer for Jumanji: The Next Level. Let me know if you're interested, if you're keen, if you're excited, what your thoughts of, The Rock playing Danny DeVito, or the character of Danny DeVito. He's not playing the actor, Danny DeVito, but the character that Danny DeVito plays within the movie, he's then playing him. But when Danny DeVito at this point in his career plays a character, it's pretty much Danny DeVito heightened. So, you know what I'm trying to say. But I'm into it. I'm looking forward to it. I like the trailer. And I'm looking forward for Jumanji: The Next Level. Alright, well, that's enough. That is enough. Let's wrap this up. We're out of time. It's gone too long already. Every time I come in, I'm like, I'm going to try and make it a half hour this time, just to tighten it up. But I I just chat, and it's too loose a format, and I enjoy it that way. So I end up just rabbling on. Is that the word? I don't know. Sometimes I talk myself into these holes where I'm just like, oh, need a word. Grab a word, not the right word. Another example here of talking myself into a hole. Anyway, keep up with the show via Facebook, Cheeky Leprechaun Productions, Instagram at Cheeky Leprechaun, or the website. You know, the production house that is Cheeky Leprechaun. It's their website. They house all their shit there. CheekyLeprechaunProductions.com. Look, thanks for hanging out. Looking forward to seeing what's in the news next time. And hopefully by then I've seen Spider-Man Far From Home and we can have a little chat about that. All right, guys. Talk to you next time.
This has been a Cheeky Leprechaun production.